Good morning, Morai v'Rabotai, Bruchim Habayim. We are continuing on Masechet Succah. We are on Daf Nun Aleph, Amud Aleph, about 19 lines down from the top of the Amud. Rabbi Yirmiyah Bar Abba Amar. Today's Amud is being learned as a schut for the Refuah Shelema of Rachel bat Edna, Michael ben Nahid, Esther Bracha bat Chaya, Avraham ben Tashgol, Chaya Rafaela bat Farah, and especially for Refuah Shelema of Rachel Simcha bat Nahid, should all have Refuah Shelema. Amen. Today's Amud is also been dedicated for Aliyat Neshama of Jacqueline bat Avraham and Adas. This week's learning of the community has been dedicated graciously by the Shea family, Dayan family, and Cohen families. It should be an ultimate schut for all their mishpachot. Amen. So we started a discussion around a braita that was brought on top of Nun Amud Bet. There we saw that Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, and Chachamim had a disagreement whether shir is doche Shabbat, is doche Yom Tov, or is it maybe not doche Shabbat and not doche Yom Tov. The shir of the Leviim on Duchan, Leviim beDuchanam, do you do it on Shabbat, do you do it on Yom Tov with instrumental music, or is it just going to be singing shira b'peh? Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda said that it is doche Shabbat even, and Rabbanan said not only is not doche Shabbat, it's not even doche Yom Tov. So we had one explanation thus far, and that's the Amora Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef said, you know what? The discussion over here is only around the regular day-to-day korbanot of the Beit HaMikdash. Whenever you had korbanot, you had the Levim singing and playing music. That's when the machloket is, whether or not you play music on Shabbat and Yom Tov. But by Beit HaShoeva, but by the 7/8 days of Chag HaSukkot, Shmini Atzeret, that you bring the Nisuch Hamayim, also you would be singing. But there, on Shabbat and Yom Tov, for sure, nobody disagrees. Nobody disagrees that that's going to be not Doche Shabbat, because that's not an avodah, that's not part of the service of the Beit HaMikdash, and therefore for sure it's not going to be Doche Shabbat and not even Doche Yom Tov. And hence, of course, our Mishnah that said Chalil of Simchat Beit HaShoeva is not Doche Shabbat, is not Doche Yom Tov, therefore only 5 days, maximum 6 days. This is what we have had so far. Now, the Gemara says now an alternative reality to that. Now, before we get to the words of Rabbi Yirmiyah, we have one last dealing with the Shita of Rabbi Yosef. One last piece is based on the Mishnah that was in Masechet Erechim Daf Yud, that there the Gemara says the surprising reality that unlike what we have always thought, that the Leviim are the only ones that are playing the music, there's 3 different shitot in the Mishnah over there. Who is playing the music? Now, the songs, the shira b'peh is the Leviim, that's for sure. But the instruments that are being played, the Gemara says Rabbi Meir, remember all this, holds that it was avadim. It was the avdei kohanim. They are the ones who are playing instruments. It's like equal opportunity for expertise in music. We don't discriminate. Avdei kohanim, the better you are, that's when you get up there. Rabbi Yossi, the Tana, holds that these were not avadim. No, they were Jews, and not only regular Jews, but they were Yisraelim miyuchasim. They were the highest level of yichus from specific families, from a specific place, as we saw, and they were good enough to marry into the Kohanim's families. So they were mamash good yichus individuals. It was mishpachat bet Pargim, mishpachat bet Sifria, and all of them were from this specific place of Amaum. That's the family that would be playing the instruments. And finally, the Mishnah says Rab Chanina ben Antignos is the one that we kind of like grew up with, that they were Leviim, that played the music, nothing besides Leviim. So Gemara wanted to suggest that this is very much like the Shita of what we just mentioned based on Rav Yosef, that the machloket over here is what exactly is the status of playing instruments in the Beit HaMikdash. If you say playing instrument in the Beit HaMikdash is an avodah, so then, of course, the avadim cannot do it, a slave cannot do it, a regular Jew cannot do it, it has to be a Levi. But if you say that playing instrument is not an avodah, and therefore it's not Doche Shabbat, like that, it's linked together. If it's not an avodah, then avadim could do it. Then Jews, regular Israelim, could do it as well. So that's how the Gemara wanted to suggest the machloket is going to be. So says the Gemara, I could push back, says the Gemara, and maybe that's not really the machloket. If you want to say, I'm reading from, now going back a little bit to what we left off yesterday, about 10 lines down. Kasavar ikar shira bepe, and says the Gemara, v'tispra Rabbi Yossi my kasavar. He says, what does Rabbi Yossi hold here? Kasavar ikar shira bepe. If Rabbi Yossi holds that shira has to be mainly with your mouth and the instruments are just a tag along, then afiru avadim nami. Then the slaves should also be able to play the instruments because it's not an avodah. And if he holds that the main part of the shira of Levim is with instruments, so hence the playing of the instrument is part of the avodah, then Levim in Yisraelim lo. Then even the Jews, regular Jews, should not be able to do it. So says the Gemara, Ela de kula alma ikar shira bepeh. Everybody holds that ikar shira is with your mouth. Everyone agrees that the shira of Levi'im does not necessarily have to be with instruments. Is the singing that they do, the mizmoret ilim, hashir shayu alvim omrim ala duchan, that's the ikar. Ubeha kamifleki, and the machloket over here is like this: the more savar hachi hava maseh, more savar hachi hava maseh. So what's the machloket in Mishnah in Masechet Erachin that you have the avadim, the Israelim, or the Leviim? Right? So says the Gemara. In other words, if you say that the machloket is whether or not the instruments are part of avodah, you would be stuck because you would have only two shitas, not three. If the instruments are avodah, then forget about the avadim. Even the Israelim can't do it, right? And if it's not avodah, then even avadim should be able to do it. Why do you have three-way machloket? Of some, Rabbi Meir holds they were avadim, Rabbi Yossi holds they were regular Jews, and Rabbi Chanina ben Antignos holds they were Leviim. It either has to be only Leviim, or it could be everybody. So when you have three, so God says, no. Everyone agrees that the shira of Leviim does not need instruments. So what is this machloket? Machloket is what actually was the reality in the Beit HaMikdash. One says the reality was like this, the other one says the reality was like that. Who cares? It has to have an afkamina. For it to make it to the Mishnayot, it has to have an afkamina. So Gemara says, what's the afkamina? Lemay afkamina. What's the difference? Halachically speaking, Gemara says, Lema'alin miduchan liyuchasin ul ma'aser kamifleki. The machloket is a very specific machloket. Has nothing to do with the shira, has to do everything with paying ma'aser and getting married. How so? If in Beit HaMikdash they were specific who they put up there, then you could rely on their research. So if you only put up Leviim for playing instruments, then you know that whoever is playing up instrument, I don't have to check their ID card and passport and go look at their parental things. You know, nowadays when the Shulchan Aruch, we mentioned before in Siman Gimel and Even HaEzer, sometimes you have to go back, check back 4 generations in order to get married for a Kohen, for a Levi, right? The Kohanim in the crowd, see me afterwards. It's not so pashut. So back then, I want to pay maaser to a Levi. How do I know if the guy is a Levi, a legitimate Levi, or is not? Well, if I see him playing instruments in the Beit HaMikdash, good, done deal. I don't have to do any further research because the Beit HaMikdash Gabayim have already done the research. I can rely on them. Ma'alin miduchan, you could assume from someone that stands on top of the duchan that he's a Levi and you could give him Maaser. If you say that they were not Levi, but they were Yisraelim miyuchasim, they were legitimate families with good, sterling yichus, to the degree that they could marry Kohanim, so then I know that if I'm a Kohen, I want to marry a mishpacha miyucheset, or even if I'm not a Kohen and I want to marry a mishpacha miyucheset. You know, there's an inyan for a person to marry from mishpacha miyucheset because the Ran writes Masechet Ketuvot that en hashchina shora ela b'mishpachot miyuchasot. The Shekhinah, you don't have children, that they will come to Talmidei Chachamim, the Shekhinah would be with them. You know, there's such a concept, to be very careful who you marry, that they are descendants of amazing people, Mishpacha Miyucheset B'Yisrael, even today, right? So therefore, because the Shekhinah does not dwell with people who are not from Mishpachot Miyuchasot, so you want to be careful in that. So you take a look, the person plays music in the Beit HaMikdash, Mishpacha Miyucheset. That's the difference. But if you say it's Avadim, could even be like Rabbi Meir. If Halakha is like Rabbi Meir, that even Avadim could be doing it, then there's no real specification. The person is playing music there, it just means that you could hire him for a music teacher for your kid, right? Aside from that, you can't give them Maaser because they're not a Levi necessarily. You can't even marry them as a Mishpacha Miyucheset because that's not a criteria. That's the difference. It says the Gemara. Manda mar Avadim hayu. Rabbi Meir holds they were Avadim. Kasavar, he holds En ma'alin miduchan liyuchasim velo lemaaser. You cannot assume anything just because the person is up on the duchan playing music, not for his yichus, and of course not for giving him maaser, because they're not necessarily a Levi, they're not necessarily even a Israel. Uman damar Yisrael hayu. And according to Rabbi Yossi, who these people were Israelim miyuchasim, so they're not Levi, you can't give them maaser, but ma'alim miduchan liyuchasim. But you could assume that they are amazing, sterling yichus, and therefore you could assume they're yichus, but not for maaser. And according to Rabbi Chanina ben Antignos, that holds that these were only Leviim, so then you could assume that they are a legitimate Levi, and you could just go give them your maaser without any further research. Ma'alin mituchan ben leyuchasin ben lemaaser. Fine. So this concludes our first half of this whole Amud and half that discuss the Shita of Rabbi Yosef. Again, we started with a Braita, a Machloket Tanaim of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda and Chachamim. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda said the shir of Bet HaMikdash, the shir of Leviim, was Doche Shabbat. Chachamim said not only was not Doche Shabbat, it was not even Doche Yom Tov. Right? Come to Rois Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef, the Amorah, came along and said the Machloket is by regular day-to-day avodah of the Bet HaMikdash, but by Sukkot, nobody disagrees that you cannot desecrate Shabbat, you cannot play music. The flute of Khalil, of the Bet HaShoeva, is not Doche Shabbat, and is not Doche Yom Tov. That's according to everyone. Machloket is a day-to-day, you bring korbanot. Chachamim say, on Shabbat you cannot play music. On Yom Tov you cannot play music. And Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda says, you can. That's how Rabbi Yosef understood this. Now, Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba is going to categorically disagree with that. He is also commenting on the same machloket Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, and Chachamim. But he holds that no, by the regular day-to-day avodah of the Bet HaMikdash, nobody disagrees that they would be playing music. You would go Shabbat morning after Musaf, after you would go to Bet HaMikdash over there, they're bringing korbanot, you would be hearing musical instruments of the Leviim. Nobody disagrees with that. The whole machloket is by Bet HaShoeva, by the 7/8 days of playing the flute, the Khalil of the Bet HaShoeva, that's the machloket. Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi Yehuda says that even by Bet HaShoeva, it was Doche Shabbat. You played music. And Rabbanan said, no, it was not an avodah. It's not an avodah, it's not Doche Shabbat. That's the machloket. And the Gemara is going to go through it back and forth. And you ready for this? The Gemara is going to categorically reject the shita of Rav Yosef, which we have been busy with in the past shiur, and stick to what we're going to start right now, the shita of Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba. The Gemara is going to end up with a tiyufta, the Rav Yosef tiyufta, that the shita of Rav Yosef is completely rejected. So therefore, we'll be ending up with the shita of Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, that understands that on regular Shabbat morning, on a regular Yom Tov morning, there will be instruments playing in Bet HaMikdash, both according to Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi Yehuda and according to Rabbanan. The whole machloket is by Masechet Succah, by the Khalil of Bet HaShoeva. So hence, says the Gemara, Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba Amar, machloket b'shir shel shoeva. The whole machloket is only by Bet HaShoeva, Simchat Bet HaShoeva. Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi Yehuda savar simcha yetera midoch et Shabbat. Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi Yehuda, who's Meken, holds that even simcha yetera, even an extra simcha, that's not an avodah bet hamikdash, still is doche Shabbat. Why? Well, because it's simcha shel mitzvah, and at the end of the day, it's only a darabanan. It's not the isur doraita. It's asur to play musical instruments because maybe the musical instrument is going to break and you're going to come to fix it on Shabbat. That's the problem. Maybe it's not. Kohanim zerizim, right? Maybe there is no shavut in the Bet HaMikdash. Generally speaking, by the way, without getting into too much details of this, the Tosafot on top of the Amud really speaks about this, whether or not this follows the regular rules that we say in the Bet HaMikdash, in the Mishkan. There was no shavut. The Rabbanans don't apply in Bet HaMikdash because Kohanim are zerizim. Kohanim are very careful and very fast and very methodical at the same time, and therefore we're not concerned that they're going to break a instrument and forget and come to fix it on Shabbat and Yom Tov. We're not so maybe yes, maybe not. That's the question within the Rishonim, within the Tosafot. But nevertheless, says Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, according to Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi Yehuda, there is no issue of playing instruments even for something that's not an avodah. Simchat Bet HaShoeva is not an avodah, the music for it. And still is mutar because it's simcha shel mitzvah. You want to be happy? You play music. Rabbanan Savri, Chachamim hold, simcha yetera ena dochet Shabbat. If it's not an avodah, you can't be pushing away Shabbat. So therefore, you do it on every other day of the Chag, but when it comes to Shabbat, when it comes to Yom Tov, you have to stop the playing of the music. Even though that on a regular Shabbat, on a regular Yom Tov, when bringing Korbanot, we do play musical instruments, say Rabbanan, when it comes to Simchat Bet HaShoeva, it's not an avodah, we're not going to do it. So says Gemara, Aval B'shir Shel Korban, Divrei HaKol, avodahi, but the shir of the Korbanot, of regular day-to-day process of the Bet HaMikdash, that, according to everyone, is avodah, v'docha et HaShabbat, that would push away Shabbat, and you will be playing musical instruments on Shabbat and on Yom Tov by bringing regular korbanot. So says the Gemara now, now that we have the two shitot of Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba that we just learned, and the previous shita of Rabbi Yosef, now the Gemara is going to actually try to see which one is correct. And the first strong question of the Gemara is from a Braita. Betivi, they asked a bomb kasha in the Bet HaMikdash on the shita of Rabbi Yosef. So says the Gemara, Shir shel shoeva docha et HaShabbat divrei Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda v'chachamim omrim af Yom Tov eno doche. The same Braita that we had on Nun Amud Bet, Machloket Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan, now it's said in a Braita explicitly about what? Simchat Bet HaShoeva. Says the Gemara, the Braita says clearly, black on white, that the Machloket Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan is about the Shira of Bet HaShoeva, not about the Shira of day-to-day process of the Bet HaMikdash. We were saying up until now that according to Rabbi Yosef, there is no machloket. Nobody holds that on Bet HaShoeva is mutar. Nobody holds that's mutar. According to everyone is asur. That's what Rabbi Yosef was saying. The Braita says not like that. The Braita says black on white that Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda holds that it is mutar to play instrument for the shir of Bet HaShoeva. So that's like a checkmate on the shita of Rabbi Yosef. Says the Gemara, tiyufta, the Rabbi Yosef, tiyufta. There is no answering this. This is like a complete checkmate of Rabbi Yosef, because he was trying to say the machloket Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbanan is only by weekdays, not by year round, not by Chag Sukkot. I found a Braita that explicitly says that the machloket is about Simchat Bet HaShoeva, so that's a checkmate. Now the Gemara says, let's see, maybe there's two checkmates over here, right? Because, how would you have two checkmates? Because Rabbi Yosef, generally speaking, spoke about this machloket, but really has two components. There are two components in Rabbi Yosef's understanding. One is that there is no machloket by Simchat Bet HaShoeva. He held that everyone holds his asur in Simchat Bet HaShoeva. Right? The only machloket is by regular year round, regular Shabbat, regular Yom Tov. The Braita that we just brought is talking about the machloket of Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbanan during the Simchat Bet HaShoeva, and it's kind of mashma that by a regular Shabbat, regular Yom Tov, everyone agrees that what? Is Doche Shabbat, is Avodah. If you say that, then Rabbi Yosef is checkmate in two ways. First, he's checkmate that he said that there's nobody that is lenient on Simchat Bet HaShoeva, and now we found that Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda is. That was the first checkmate. Secondly, he felt that it's machloket, that Rabbanan are still machmir by regular Shabbat, regular Yom Tov. And our Braita is mashma that Rabbanan will be even mekel by regular Shabbat, regular, that would be even a bigger checkmate. So says the Gemara, Lema b'shir shel shoeva ide pligi, aval b'shir shel korban divra kol docha et HaShabbat. If we understand the Braita like that, then lema tevet tiyufta de Rabbi Yosef betarti, then the tiyufta of Rabbi Yosef is going to be in two things, not just in one. It's two checkmates. So Amar Achar Rabbi Yosef always says no. One checkmate is enough for me, right? Rabbanan and Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, they disagree on regular Shabbat as well. It's not just by Simchat Bet HaShoeva that they are disagreeing, but even on regular Shabbat, throughout the whole year, it's a across-the-board machloket. Rabbanan hold the playing of the instrument always is asur on Shabbat and Yom Tov, whether it's Shabbat and Yom Tov of Chag Sukkot, whether it's Shabbat and Yom Tov during the course of the year, they always are machmir. And Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yehuda is always mekel. That's how he wants to suggest right now. So says the Gemara, Amar lecha Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef will tell you, it's across the board. Beshir shel shoeva peligi vehu adin lekorban. They are disagreeing with everything throughout the Shabbatot and Yamim Tovim of the year, both Chag Sukkot and the other ones. So says the Gemara, v'haydek hamifligi beshir shel shoeva. So what, you would ask me a simple question. Why would the Braita say that the machloket is by the shir of Bet HaShoeva? We have to answer that. Why wouldn't I make a diuk? When you would tell me a Braita, if I would tell you a sentence, that Peloni and Almoni have a machloket if the shir of Bet HaShoeva is mutar to do on Shabbat. What would you think? You would think that's only specifically applicable to shir shel shoeva. Otherwise, why would I say shir shel shoeva? Says Rabbi Yosef, no. The reason that they specifically mention the musical instruments of Chag Sukkot in Simchat Bet HaShoeva is because there's an additional chidush in the shita of Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda, who is mekel. That's a massive chidush, that even though that the musical instruments of Chag Sukkot is not an avodah, right? Singing on Bet HaShoeva, is it the avodah of Bet HaMikdash? No, it's not. And yet, Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yehuda holds you could be doche Shabbat. That's a massive chidush. That's a big koach de'etera. Koach de'etera, that Rabbi Yosef ben Yehuda, he has the shoulders to even be lenient on pushing Shabbat for something that's not even avodah. That's why it says it by Shir Shel Shova. But really, Rabbi Yosef ben Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan disagree across the board for the entire year. Rabbi Yosef ben Rabbi Yehuda holds it's always mutar. Rabbanan holds it's always asur. So don't ask me why you specifically said it in Simchat Beit HaShoeva, because that has an additional chidush that Rabbi Yosef ben Rabbi Yehuda has the shoulders to even be mekel in something that's not avodah to push Shabbat. Fine. That's the current suggestion of Rabbi Yosef. The Gemara wants to save Rabbi Yosef from having a double checkmate. The Gemara is going to push that away, and he's going to be double checkmated in just a moment. Says the Gemara, V'hakatani, says the Gemara, can't say that because the Braita says, Zehu Khalil, really the Braita that we had earlier, based on our Mishnah, that the Khalil of Beit HaShoeva is Chamisha v'Shisha, Zehu HaKhalil shel Beit HaShoeva. Our Mishnah says, this is the musical flute of Beit HaShoeva. That is not Doche, no Shabbat, and no Yom Tov, right? Who is our Mishnah? Who is the Tana of our Mishnah, according to Rabbi Yosef? Well, says the Gemara, Zehu the Eino Doche, aval the Korban Doche. It's clear in our Mishnah that Zehu she'eino Doche. This is the one that's not Doche Shabbat, but the Khalil of Korban, the musical instruments of Korbanot, is Doche Shabbat. That much is pretty clear in our Mishnah. So who is the Mishnah? Says the Gemara, Mani, ine ma Rabbi Yosef ben Rabbi Yehuda. Which Tana is it? If you say it's Rabbi Yosef ben Rabbi Yehuda, what do you mean? Rabbi Yosef ben Rabbi Yehuda holds that even by Beit HaShoeva is Doche. Our Mishnah says Beit HaShoeva is not Doche Shabbat. So it can't be Rabbi Yosef ben Rabbi Yehuda. Must be who? There's only two options. It's either Rabbi Yosef ben Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbanan. So if it's Rabbanan, says the Gemara, Elalav Rabbanan, it's Rabbanan v'tiyufta, the Rabbi Yosef betarti tiyufta, because now it comes out that Rabbanan are the Tanaim, the Tana of our Mishnah, and they hold that by Beit HaShoeva is not Doche, but by a regular Korban, it is Doche. So that completely washes away the suggestion of the Gemara that according to everyone, it's machloket in year-round as well. You see over here that there is no machloket. Even Rabbanan who are machmir, they're going to be mekel on a regular Shabbat. They're going to be mekel on a regular Yom Tov. You will go on a regular Shabbat or a Pesach morning or a Shabbat morning into Beit HaMikdash. There will be musical instruments playing all around, and that is even according to the most stringent shita, which is Rabbanan. So therefore, we completely, totally, and categorically rejected the shita of Rabbi Yosef in the understanding of the Machloket Tanaim, and we stick to the shita of Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba. Now we have a few more lines to go back and question this whole concept from the Psukim. Where do we get this from? The machloket of whether or not you need instruments or the Levim would just be singing, where does that come from? Yes, instruments, no instruments, it's all from the Psukim. Says the Gemara. My Tama Demanda Amar Ikar Shira Bekeli. The one that holds that the Ikar of the Shira of Levim was with instruments, where does he get that from? Says the Gemara, from a pasuk Tichtiv, Vayomer Chizkiyahu leha'alot ha'ola le'amizbeach. You know, Chizkiyahu HaMelech was Melech Tzadik. His father was who? Achaz. Achaz Melech Yehuda was a tremendous Rasha. Very bad person. He stopped people from serving Hashem. He stopped the Avodah of the Beit HaMikdash in the way he was. He did a lot of horrifying things. And his son was Mamash turning in 180. He became the greatest king after David HaMelech. When I said, and he says Hashem wanted to make him Mashiach. Right? He says in the time of Chizkiyahu, they checked from Dan at Beersheba. There was no tinok v'tinoket, little kids who didn't know the most complex parts of the Torah. So here is the pasuk in Divrei Hayamim who depicts the beginning of the process of Chizkiyahu HaMelech turning the tide on the whole community and starting the avodah, reinstituting the avodah of the Beit HaMikdash. And the pasuk says, "Vayomer Chizkiyahu la'alot ha'olah la'mizbeach." He said to start bringing the olah, the korbanot, to the mizbeach. Uchet echel ha'olah, and when he started the korban olah to be brought, echel shir Hashem, started the shira of Hashem, ve'chasosrot, and the chasosrot, the trumpets, to be blowing. Ve'al yedei kelei David melech Yisrael, and was through the instruments of David melech Yisrael. So you see from here, says the Gemara, that the kelei David melech Yisrael is called Shir Hashem. So Shir Hashem has to be through kelei David melech Yisrael, and therefore you see that Ikar Shira is bekeli. Says the Gemara, my tama demanda amar Ikar Shira bepe. So the other one that holds the Ikar is with your mouth, not with instruments. What does he hold? So the Gemara says he also has God his pasuk. Dichtiv vayhi ke'echad lemachasesrim ve'lameshorerim. It was like one of the people who blew trumpet, or those who sang. So it's separate. The ones who sang lehashmiya kol echad, to hear their voice, to make their voice heard. And you see from here that Meshorerim, there's no Kalei Shir mentioned over there, it's just singing. So from here you see that you need no accompaniment of Kalei Shir, even though that it talks about trumpets, that's a completely different thing. That was not for music, that was just for announcements. So says the Gemara, the second shita also has to deal with the first pasuk of Chizkiyahu. How does he read the pasuk of Chizkiyahu? Hachikamar, says the Gemara. This is how he's saying it. Hechel shir Hashem bepe. It's a comma there. In the pasuk, there has to be a comma. Hechel shir Hashem, comma, and then al yedei klei David melech Yisrael lebasu mikala. The musical instruments were just for additional beauty and harmony and music, but not that it was part of Shir Hashem. There's a comma after Shir Hashem over there. Shir Hashem was with your mouth. The first shita also has to do with the second pasuk. You see there that Shira is not accompanied with any instruments. Says the Gemara, Hachikamar. This is how you have to read the pasuk. Meshorerim du b'yad mechasesrim. The pasuk says two things. One were the trumpet players, which is not music, is for just playing the trumpets, for not as a music, but it's like blowing shofar. They would have the chasosrot. Ma mechasesrim bekeli af meshorerim, but at the end of the day, the pasuk puts them together. Ke'echad mechasesrim ma meshorerim. So he's coming to the juxtaposition is coming to tell you that just like the mechasesrim were with a vessel, the meshorerim also has to be through a vessel. It has to be through klei shir, and therefore we have two different shitot. Both of them have their legitimate sources in the psukim, and that concludes our first Mishnah of the Perek. The second Mishnah is what you definitely do not want to miss. This is the Mishnah that says, "Mishelo ra'a simchat beit hashoeva, lo ra'a simcha miyamav." If you didn't experience the simcha beit hashoeva, you never experienced simcha in your life. So that's the Mishnah that's going to explain the actual simcha beit hashoeva, which Be'ezrat Hashem will continue in the next year.